So, Andy, it is now
Jonathan,
time for our question and answer thing. I know we've got a couple of questions.
we do, we do.
Would you
We've got
please?
a couple of really very good questions, and thank the people who did send in questions. The first question that is from a lovely person by the name of Harvey, and he wants to know what the relationship between frequency and intention is. Is it all just really placebo or intention? Does does the sound really matter? Can you speak to this question, Jonathan? Because it is one that many people are wanting
Right.
answer to.
I literally have been getting this as a question for close to 40 years. When I first came up with the formula, people are like, well, okay, and they start today. Well, intention, well, is it all then just intent? And I actually spent a bit of time really trying to research as much as I could, and also having conversations with you and a number of
Mhm.
colleagues and our wonderful Healing Sounds operations manager, Alec Sims, had some wonderful ideas on this whole thing. And bottom line is people are saying, okay, well, is it just intent? Can you make any sound? And ultimately the answer is it depends. It depends. What is the situation? I think the key word always is balance. It is frequency plus intent. It's not just the intent alone, nor is it just the frequency, but there is, if you like, a synergistic effect that occurs. And it can vary also from person to person and from situation to situation. And also times, mind you, that oftentimes intent is very subtle and we may not be aware of its power initially. It may work more on the subtle body than on the physical body. And at the same time, the same thing, though, is true with sound. We'll be talking about harmonics at some point, but harmonics are the embodiment
Mhm.
of, the subtlety of sound. So on a level, I'd love to say, well, it's this or it's that, or it's 40% this and 60% that. But I would like to sort of suggest that unless you are a person who can easily levitate or walk through walls or whatnot, in that case, you probably don't have to pay much attention to what the frequency is. But other than that, the intention, it's important, but I think it's balancing. Andy, what do you got to say about that?
Well, I like that it is that balance, but you know, the bottom line too, Jonathan,
Mm,
is that sound affects us. It affects us no matter what. On a physical level, we have this physical body.
mm.
And so the sound is going to affect us virtually because of that. And there are two ways really that are very powerful ways that sound affects us. And one is called psychoacoustics. And that is when we are simply listening. That is when the goes in through our ears, travels down our auditory pathway into our brain, and it affects our nervous system. It affects our brain waves, our heart rate. And so we are affected simply even by listening to sound. The other way is through vibroacoustics, and that is when the sound goes directly into our bodies at a cellular level. And when we are making sound, that is happening. And of course, we always like to, when we're talking about humming, which we have been talking about quite a bit lately, that sound is really the most powerful vibroacoustic sound that we can actually make. But so no matter what we do, we are going to be affected by the sound.
Right, and talking about humming just as a thing, so you're going to get the vibrations of the hum, and you're going to get the physiological effects that occur, the release of melatonin
Oxytocin.
and nitric oxide and all sorts of other things like that. But on a level with our intentionality, we can really direct the sound to different parts of our body for different purposes. So once again, they work together, kind of like peanut butter and jelly. You know, they just really work together.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
just like to say that once again, so it's a combination of
Mhm.
frequency plus intent. And it really, you know, you can tell stories of, oh, here's a case where it was mostly the frequency. Here's the case where it was mostly the intent. Depends on the person, the situation.
Mhm. Mhm.
What
Mhm.
works for one person may not necessarily work for another person. So it's, I
Mhm.
mean, and this is actually gets into our topic for next month, which is the topic of being unique vibratory beings. And this falls so much into the realm of how, you know, much intention is working on us and why and when.
Mhm.